So today, first up, we look at some concept of Agile Project Management and how change management uh, is applicable in the Agile Project Management context. In the previous session, if you can recall, we discussed in greater detail about the change management and various theories around change management. So we'll see, we run through some basic concepts of Agile Project Management, and then we try to see how the change management theories that we discussed in the previous session could be applicable in an agile environment. So, so you have got the waterfall development life cycle, the waterfall method or the software development life cycle of the waterfall method contains of series of step-by-step activities, which is actually lined up one after the another. So the disadvantage of the waterfall activities is actually one thing is that it's fully dependent on the previous phase, and you have to complete the previous phase and come to the next phase. So it's a serialized process, and and the project planning and any planning activities in a waterfall software development lifecycle method is actually primary is done very much prior. So you try to plan very much in advance in the waterfall method, and very much in advance in detail. And sometimes the when you travel through the waterfall method as a serialized process, down the line the teams tend to forget about the time schedule and they lose track. So there's a greater tendency that they lose track of the project schedule, and generally they try to go behind the project schedule. So as I said, it's planned at the start, and if one phase is delayed, then it has a cascading effect on the other phases. If the development is delayed, then of course it has a cascading effect on the UAT and all the other activities that is to be followed. Then another thing in the waterfall software development lifecycle method is that basically the requirements cannot, I mean, it's not cannot be changed, but then requirements are not much entertained. I mean, the changes are not much entertained at the middle, and you're discouraging it because we learned in the scope and we learned in the cost side of the project management side how later on changes will have a cascading effect on the cost and the schedule. So taking these factors into consideration, a group of industry experts in 2001 actually met, and they came up with this concept of Agile, which is called the Agile Manifesto. So the original Agile is actually it's a concept. It's basically a value system. What they call is a value system. It's not a framework. It's a value system, and they came up with some key principles and values that would eliminate some negative effect of the waterfall method. So waterfall method is, I mean, it's nothing wrong with it, but this is a more agile, where they try to come and they try to interact with the customer more frequently. So here the main, as you know, the main key difference is that you try to incrementally develop a software solution. The project time and the project efforts will go for a incremental development of a software. What do you call a software in a iterative cycles, and primarily about 2 weeks, but then it depends on your project. So incrementally you try to develop, rather than you try to deliver the software at once to the customer at the end of the project. All right. So the key 4 values that the software experts who got together in 2001 and they try to develop. They develop 4 key values under Agile. So one of the first one is actually what they said was there should be more individual interactions, and there should be more interactions between people, the customer, and the development teams over process and tool, because without getting yourself bogged down into processes and the tools, there should be more and more interaction with the customers in order to understand the need of the solution that they're going to deliver. Then the second value they were looking at is try to provide you a working software. Try to provide you a working software other than comprehensive documentation. In many project management or in software development, people try to go for very comprehensive documentation, user manuals, and other documentations. Even we in the project management, we learned in the last few sessions how documentation is important. It is important, but in the Agile Manifesto, they value a working software over a comprehensive documentation, and they value more customer collaboration, the collaboration with the customer, than a contract negotiation. Not to bog down in your contract and the terms and conditions of the contract, what to deliver and what not to deliver. To basically to always interact with your customer, to collaborate with your customer, to identify the needs of the customer well. And other main thing is that to respond to changes and over following a plan. The waterfall cycle actually follows a set plan, where they discourage changes down the order. But the main thing that they want to incorporate is responding to changes rather than following a plan. So these are the 4 values in the Agile Manifesto, the 4 basic principles that the Agile concept is based on. And there were some. They also introduced 12 sub principles in Agile development, and which are listed here. So basically, once again, building upon the four values, the principles that they developed was actually the customer sat. They wanted actually to give more customer satisfaction through early and continuous software delivery. So that is what is important: a continuous software delivery than delivering at the end. So to give more customer satisfaction to continuous software delivery, accommodate changes, changing requirements throughout the development process without shutting down with the after finalizing the scope and without shutting down the process, and then go to the change management control. Try to accommodate much as possible the changing requirements in the development process, and frequently deliver a working software to the customer, at least every 2 weeks after the iterative cycle. Try to deliver a working software to the customer. Collaboration between business and stakeholders and development throughout the project. So they encourage what they said was try to encourage collaboration between the business stakeholders and the developers throughout the project, so that what the customer need is properly addressed. Support and trust and motivate the people who are involved. enable more face-to-face interactions rather than documentary-based interactions, so that again to capture the need properly. Working software is a primary measure of progress. So how much you are doing with the working software is a primary focus, primary measure of progress, rather than the progress of something that is being developed, or rather than time be the primary measure. The primary measure of performance would be how much you have delivered a working software. And agile process should process to support a consistent development phase to carry on. So these processes, what they said was to carry on a continuous development phase, so that there is no hindrance process in the development part. Attention to technical details as usual. Simplicity, again, try to avoid any unwanted features or any unwanted complex features, to be simple. Self-organizing teams, they encourage, in Agile, one of the primary factors is that you try to encourage small development teams rather than large development teams. And your teams are also multi-talented and cross-functional. So in sometimes, what they encourage in Agile is basically, in traditional, you have testers, and testing teams are separate and the developers are separate. But in Agile, they try to encourage cross-functionality so that the developer might test the system at the end of the development, so that you are not dependent on another resource. So they encourage small teams and cross-functional teams, and regular reflections on how to become more effective. This is nothing but, like already we learned, it is a control aspect. You try to see and go back and see what can be improved, and after each iterative cycle, try to take a meeting and to see what can be improved in the next iterative cycle. Waterfall method is a sequential, linear, upfront planning, more into contract, based on the contract. And yes, it's best for simple, but majorly challenges, it's best for unchanging products. Once if the scope is fixed and once signed off and everything is okay, then of course you can go for a waterfall. But then if the scope seems to be changing, or the customer is not much understandable on what he wants, then of course it's the agile development that is more beneficial. So here is a continuous cycle, continuous iterative cycles, and collaborated, as I told you, collaborative teams, high functioning, and flexible and continuous and customer involvement. Right. So the rise of agile, basically why agile was more preferred, is actually was due to iterative approach, of his iterative approach of the values that they introduced, because the tasks are broken down into small incremental functions, and it was and you follow many iterative cycles. And also we learned in the scoping, when you scope, and even in the scheduling and project scheduling, if you can recall, we learned the rolling wave planning method, where you try to plan in detail what you for the current phase, and for the future activities you try to have a high level view of the schedule. So likewise, it rather than planning in advance, it encourages planning what you know now in detail, and what you're left in a more high level you can plan, so that the more rolling wave planning method can be used. Then people liked agile because the rise of the agile, people like this agile concept was getting captured because it allowed the development effort to get feedback from the customer, because you at each iterative, at each end of each iteration, the system working software was shown to the customer and feedback was obtained, and it was continuously improved in the next iterative cycle. So people like that and that concept, and that's why the rise of Agile was so fastly adopted. And other thing from the customer side, the scope was never closed. I mean, the scope is never closed and signed off. So it's a continual reassessment, and where you try to capture after each iterative cycle, you capture your the scope and try to ask your customer anything else to be taken in, and then reprioritize your activities and go to the next iterative cycle. So these four elements, and they say, were one of the most capturing elements, so that the world adopted Agile so fast. Right. So come to project management in the official PIM. So we learned this in all these in our previous sessions. We looked at five process groups: the initiating process group, the planning, the controlling, executing, and the closing. So these things we are now well aware of these. So in the Agile project management, they are already in the project management framework at the project management PIM. They are mapped each and every element here into the Agile project management phase. So the color denominates each process. So the initiation process is called the envisioning process here in the Agile project management. The planning process is called the speculate process. We come in a little bit in detail. Executing, as you know, our processes are also known as the exploring method, and controlling the orange goes to orange. It's called the adapt process, and close is close. So envisioning stage is actually you try to develop the project scope or the project vision of the product vision. So you try to develop the overall scope, because you need to understand the overall scope of the project that you're going to handle. Maybe the minute details, it's coming under the iterative cycles, but then as an overall, like your project charter, what you learn is almost the same thing. So you as a project manager and your team should be able to understand the entire project scope at the beginning of the project. So once that is done, the speculate is actually the planning stage of it. Then of course you can, once it is done, you can decide on how many releases that they are going to do, how many iterative cycles that they are going to do, and you can plan your iterative plans once you have a very good picture of the overall scope of what is to get delivered in your project. Explore, as I said, is the engine of it, where the development team start working on iterative cycles, and adapt is the controlling part, the review part. We'll come into details in a little bit. The controlling the part of the project management, and the closing is the closing part of the project. So envisioning, like a project charter, is a mapping to this side from the Agile project side. Sometimes they say envisioning and explore can be very close in bridge in small shorter projects, but then this is where you select your teams and select your identify your key stakeholders and have series of meetings and try to get an overall picture of your project. So here basically envision place, we clearly identify what is to be done, what is this project about, what is the goal of the project, what is the goal of the customer, what is the expectation level, and how the work is to be accomplished at the end of the day, and what is the customer's vision for the product, if the ERP system or something. So what is the customer's vision, what is the expectation, what is the overall scope of the project, and like the charter, what we understood, what are the constraints, what are the high-level risks, what is the high-level budget, and what is the team to be delivered, who are your stakeholders. So this is almost similar to that. Try to understand the overall picture of the project. One thing what they say is one step more is that once the visioning is done, either to the product or the project, there's something called the elevator to, as a project manager, describe the overall goal of the project at least within 2 minutes to any member of your team. This project is this. So what this is, that is the test that they do. If you are done envisioning properly, you should be able to state the goal of your project within 2 or 3 minutes in a very short time to any member of your team. So the elevator test is that your ability to, once done in one sheet of paper, everything is there like a project charter, and you should be able to explain your project to someone within 2 minutes, and that is called the elevator statement. If you're developing a product, say your project is to develop a product or a new car or new engineering product, then of course basically your product name and what are the selling points for your product, then a bit of a detailed description, what is the output of your vehicle or of the product that you're going to do, what are the operating requirements. So if that is a product, if it is a project like thing at software development, so then those dimensions can be taken into the picture. So so it's a single page summary, end of the day, detailing out your project objectives. And if you go into details, so it's something like this. So like the project charter. So it will identify your leader, who is your product manager, who is your sponsor, and what are your quality objectives, what are your quality objectives of your project, who are your other stakeholders of your project, and if you go into more detail, so it's almost similar. I mean, what are your key customers, who is the project leader, who is the product manager, or who is the manager, who is from the business side, who is going to handle the project, from the other side, who's the guy there, the executive sponsor, the objectives, the business objectives, any trade-offs that you are taking into account, then any high-level costings that is required, the quality objectives that is there, the attributes, the risks. So likewise, I mean, this will be a summary data sheet that will contain all the high-level factors about the project. Right. So coming into the speculative stage. Okay. Coming into the speculate phase, which is mapping with the planning phase of the traditional project management. This is where actually you try to plan your activities. So sometimes you might translate your product vision and the vision that you created in the previous phase into little bit of more requirements, which is called the product backlog. The requirements are called product backlog in agile terms, and or user stories, called user stories, into more little bit detail. So you might break up into some. Now you are trying to elaborate much as like your scoping. So you are trying to elaborate a little bit, and with that you might once that is done, once a reasonable amount of elaboration of the product vision is done into requirements, you might be able to plan out your release levels, plan out your iteration level. This set of features might go in the first release. This set of features might go in the second release at a high level release level. So then at the down level, more into iterative level, you can have a plan. Maybe if you are experienced manager, then you can tell this amount of release level, this amount of features to be in the first release level, you might have to go for about 5 times of iterative cycles. There is something called a wave level also, where 2 or 3 iterative cycles, they combine together and call it wave level, and all these two together call the release level. So once you have done done the missioning of the product, then you have broken it down into a bit of a minute requirements level. Then you will be in a better position as a project manager, plan out your release levels and the iterative cycle levels. So the explore level is the engine of it, where your team start delivering the work. Team start at each iterative level. So now from your product mission statement, you have in your previous stage, you have identified your product backlog, in other words, the high level requirements. And now you're pulling one and one into iteratives. Out of those requirements, you're taking a bunch of it and going for the iterative cycles and try to give you a deliverable working software product after each iterative cycle. So explore phase is actually the delivering of the work, and where you have your daily integration meetings, and your team developments will happen. Your core development teams, there will be interactions with the customer and the customer teams at each iterative cycles. And you as a project manager, you will be managing the workload, and or there will be somebody in your team who will handle the workload or the work in progress part of your each iterative cycle. And this is the phase where plans are converted into deliverables. So moving forward, adapt, as I told you, is the controlling phase. Orange to orange is the controlling phase of it, that we have already discussed in detail in the controlling phase. So adapt is actually the controlling phase, where after each iterative cycle, it could be in the technical perspective, maybe the product quality side that you are trying to control, and you have measured it, and maybe it's not up to the quality standards. In the previous iterative cycles, when you show to the customer, maybe there are some bugs. So now you are trying to make corrective actions so that in the next iterative cycle you can start fixing those things. In the customer's perspective, maybe functionality, that the things that you thought that you delivered maybe not the exact way the customer wanted. So from the customer perspective or in the technical perspective, the team can constantly monitor and take adaptive actions so that it can be corrected in the upcoming iterative cycles. Also can be it can be something to do with your team's performance, maybe some issues with your team performance, or some programmer is doing some more errors, or you're behind the schedule or something like that. So something to do with the team performance parameters, and also the overall project status. You as a project manager controlling the scope, controlling the cost, controlling the schedule, controlling the quality. So all those, the controlling aspect that we have already learned, can come into the adapt stage, where you take after each iterative cycle, after each cycle, you try to take corrective action. So you can plan your iterative cycle, perform the work, and adapt, and do the controlling part. Plan the next iterative cycle, perform the work, and do the product, and do the controlling part of it. So many iterative cycles will give you the release level end of the day. Then at the closing stage, closing of the project, lessons learned, as already we have learned, the lessons learned are captured, all the procurements are closed, and where you celebrate your success, and you as a project manager, you update your PMO office all the documentations and try to exit from the project. So the general project closure stage will happen in the project on the close phase. Right. So just to recap again, in the traditional project management, yes, we understand. We generally focus on plans. We give more effort to plan in the project, plan in the scope, and artifacts, the project documentations. And where in Agile, it's more the value that the Agile concept comes more into customer interactions. And here we respond to change via corrective and preventive actions or the change management control. And here since it's a change control through adaptive actions and through iterative cycles. And typically we focus on upfront planning. Here, yes, there is upfront planning involved at the speculative phase, but then more detail is more in the iterative cycle and iterative planning. So more work breakdown structures, breaking into work packages into more activity levels will happen at iterative cycles. Whereas in typical project management, we try to go much as possible into activity level at the initial stage. But there are also, point to note, we can use rolling wave planning method. Maybe very long short-term activities, we can have estimated timelines, and later we can break down into more and more activity level once the project is closer to those milestones. But here, of course, it's more in the agile process. It's more at each iterative planning. It will be more actually at the activity level. More into scope-based delivery, where you try to primarily the project manager will be primarily your focus of attention will be on the scope. Here, your project manager, your scope of attention might be more into time box delivery. I mean, within 2 weeks of your iterative cycle, that you can deliver the planned set of actions from the product backlog that you are taken into this iterative cycle. More into contract oriented, more into customer oriented, because of the iterative nature of the agile project management. So these are the, basic conceptually, the traditional project management and the agile project management, how it varies. So, so as I told you, agile is more on a value concept. These are the values and the principles. It's like a guideline. The one in 2001, the experts got together and they give a value system. It's not a framework. They give, if you are doing agile, these are the value concepts that you have to follow. So based on those value concepts, the four main values and the 12 principles that they laid down, later on people develop agile frameworks. So based on the entire agile value system, these these are frameworks. So people later on develop frameworks based on the values that they specified by the Agile Consortium. They develop frameworks. So Scrum, as you have known, is one of the famous frameworks that they use. Then there's something called the Lean framework, the Kanban framework, future-driven development framework, and extreme programming framework. So these are certain frameworks that people adopt in different companies based on the situation. So you might already know about Scrum, and maybe in your organization, you can tell me better than me using Scrum. So Scrum is developed on the value system that of the Agile concept. So here there's a product owner. There's a concept of a product owner for your product. A development owner who will take the inputs from the customers and their part team managers. The project manager is separate, but there's a product owner here, and then These requirements are all, as I told you, these requirements are basically a catalog in which is called the product backlog. So if you can remember the envisioning stage, and at this at the speculate stage at the planning stage, all in detail the product requirements are laid down. So once that is done, then for what they call the iterative cycle, they call it a sprint. So what they define in this framework is that at each the iterative cycle is called a sprint, and before an iterative cycle starting, there will be a sprint planning meeting with the development team, the project manager, and the then there is something called the Scrum Master. There is a role they are defined in the Scrum called the Scrum Master, who will take in control of the each sprint. So they all get together and take certain backlog, certain features, requirements of here the customer requirements into this sprint. So then there will be sprint planning, and the requirement said that maybe there are 100 requirements here for this sprint of these next 2 weeks, maybe or 2 weeks, it depends of your organization. You're taking 10 requirements, and then you're trying to develop those requirements. So that subset of requirements is called the sprint backlog. So these sprint backlogs will be given to your team to develop end of the day. So the sprint will go on for the for the development. Once you start the sprint, of course, it's locked up. So then the guys will be developing on the sprint and the sprint backlog, what they have already decided at the sprint planning meeting. What they say is in the Scrum framework, what they say is the Scrum Master who's involved will take a daily stand-up meeting. Again, they describe why a stand-up meeting and not a sit-down meeting, because stand-up is just a 10-minute meeting, and they don't want the development team to get disturbed. Just a 10 minutes meeting or a 15 minutes meeting, standing up, just to recap what you did yesterday, and any obstacles that you faced yesterday, and any things that the Scrum Master or the project manager has to solve out, and then just to recap the sprint backlog. So it's just a stand-up meeting to get the progress up. And once everything is delivered, once the sprint is over, then there will be a shippable product, a product that the customer can see. So that there will be a sprint review where the customer is involved, and your Scrum Master and the project manager is involved, who will do a sprint review. The customer will come and see the product, and then you will take any feedback of it, and there's a taking feedback, and try to. There is something called the sprint retrospective, where actually you try to understand the controlling part of it, where to understand what went wrong, and what worked well, and what is to be improved, and why those bugs came, or why the customer said that these things are not there. So this is the controlling part. This is the adapt part of it. So this Scrum, basically you can map to your project cycle. So this is the adapt part of it. This is the execute part of it, and this is the speculate part of it, and of the envisioning part. We are come to this will be the envisioning part. So like in the Scrum, so you can map to your project management framework as well as to the Agile framework. Okay. So so the project manager is primarily involved in the activity that we have already discussed in various other sessions in previous sessions. And as we go, the Scrum Master is who's handling. I don't know. It might vary from company to company. End of the day, that's why I'm not practically involved in this. Sometimes maybe in a small company, the Scrum Master and the project manager may be the same guy. So it's how you adapt the framework into your organization. So basically, in a large organization, maybe there is a Scrum Master separately, who will address the team issues, and who will see what's obstructing the people to perform, to minimize the disruption and minimize the work in progress, because he has to finish off the sprint backlog, the items that you selected for the sprint, to finish it off. Update on the burn down. If you can remember, in the schedule management, in the schedule management, we talked about a burn down graph. So to track the activities. So these things can be done by the Scrum Master. Right. So the lean, there's another called the lean framework, again based on the Agile principles. These are almost the same. Even I discussed Kanban. The Kanban is almost same as the Scrum. This is also almost the same as Scrum. But the principles, again, it is based on another subset of principles, which is for the lean. So lean concept, what they say, is came from just-in-time concept from the Toyota and the Japanese guys, where they try to minimize the work in progress. So the 7 principles that they try to practice under the lean concept is the same thing, but then more emphasis on eliminating waste. What they say is, let's try not to do things that will not add value to your customer, and let's try not to do not fancy stuff. So try to give up to the customer, and remove any unnecessary coding and functionality that's done. Not what the customer wants, but then any unnecessary stuff, and eliminate inefficient tested module. I mean, if you've tested the module and if it is inefficient, scrap it out, and so that there is no waste on that. So eliminate waste, and they try to again rely on a principle of amplifying learning. They try to encourage learning, so that learning is spread across all iterative cycles. And so more as you go into iterative cycle, you learn from your mistakes and learn more. This one was a bit tricky. I mean, try to decide as late as possible. This is like the just-in-time system. Try ordering at the last moment. When you order in the Toyota, what they say, just in time, you order what you want at the last. So try to decide at the latest. So this what they say is, delaying taking a last moment decision will open up you to seek better options. I mean, basically, without taking a decision now, maybe you have to take a decision by next week, something to do with the project decision. Maybe you can take it at that point, so that within this week you might have get better more options. Makes sense end of the day. So so delay the decisions and take at the point of only, so that you will get more options on the hand by the time of you're getting decisions. And obviously deliver fast as possible to your customer, and quickly incorporate the feedback of the working software that you show to the customer, and quickly incorporate the feedback to the next iterative cycle. Then, as I told you, it's a cross. Agile is more about a cross-functional team, where the team is more multitasking. So empower your team such that the team will organize themselves in more efficient ways, to give more empowerment to your team, give more authority to your team, so that they will take on decisions. Build more integrity into your team and iterative cycles, so everything is very transparent with your customer, and so build more integrity in your teams, and seek as a whole. So think big, think on a holistic method. So these are the 7 additional principles that the lean framework based on the Agile principles try to concentrate. So the Kanban is is another framework that they have developed based on the Agile framework, Agile Principles. So if you can remember in the Scrum, the difference between the Scrum and the Kanban is that Kanban is a continuous process, whereas Scrum is actually a it's a 2 week. I mean, there is a it's an example 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks iterative cycles. So in Scrum, basically you have your backlog, the feature list that the customer wants, the entire 100 feature list. From that, for the sprint, you take maybe 20 out of the 100, and 20 will be done and completed. So this is actually called, that's why I asked, something like this is called the Scrum board. So they have a Scrum board like this, pasted up on the wall. So you, beginning of the iterative cycle, the sprint, you know these 10 activities or 20 activities to be done, and after each activity it goes to the progress and it goes to complete, goes to the progress and it goes to complete. So at the end of the sprint, was use 10, and for this sprint, after the 10, if everything went right, there will be 10 here completed, and this column will be blank. But in Kanban, what they say is it's a pull system. Actually, Agile is a pull system. So it's a pull system. So once one list comes to the progress and goes to the complete, any column cannot be blank. So then you take another one from the backlog, and that goes to the progress, and then it go to the complete. Then you take another one from the backlog. So likewise, it's not a time box iterative cycle. It's a continuous process of development. Got the picture? So this never stops end of the day. So so basically, Kanban, the board remains continuous. So the Kanban board, unlike the Scrum board, the board remains continuous. Here in Scrum, the board is reset after each sprint. So that to-do list is blank, will be blank. This to-do list will be blank after each sprint. But in Scrum, the moment one item got eliminated from the to-do list, another item will be pulled from the product backlog. So the work in progress limits are applied per workflow stage. I mean, basically, the how much your team, how much can they do. The work in progress limits are applied to the workflow stage. I mean, each column there'll be a maximum depending on your team capacity. But here the number of tasks is set before the sprint. So we know exactly before the sprint start in the Scrum, this amount of 10 tasks will be developed in this sprint. And when the work is completed, the capacity is released and the new work item can be started. So when the work is completed, the capacity is released from the team. A new work will be taken from the backlog to the to-do list. In the Scrum team cannot add new work. So even if the work is finished, the Scrum team cannot add new work to the sprint backlog during a sprint. So once you start at the sprint meeting, you decide these are the 10 items you are going to do, and even if you, so once everything is finished, one by one is finishing, they are not adding anything new unless the customer wants and there is a major how with the customer. So basically, per sprint, the sprint backlog is fixed. In Kanban, it is not fixed. It is continuously, you pull it out. So again, to recap, Scrum is a time boxed one, and where here is not a time box, it's a continuous stuff that is done, and during that continuous process, you start showing the customer the system, and then take feedback again from the customer side. So team commits to a specific amount of work for this iteration, for the sprint. Your team is committed this amount of 10 activities that they are going to do. Commitment here, I mean, these are all these are all frameworks. So commitment is optional, but then basically they say there is no commitment. So one by one by one by one, it's like a machine. You keep on doing it. Uh, so that you uses the user's velocity. I mean, basically the speed as the planning process improvement. Here you take the lead time, how much of time that is I mean, to deliver the customer the project lead time as the default metric of the planning process. Cross-functional teams are prescribed. Here what they say is in Kanban, as I told you sometime, that in Scrum, the cross-functional team is the key. I mean, maybe the program is required to do the testing, but in Scrum, but in Kanban, basically the cross-functional teams are optional. Basically, you can have specialized teams because it is a continuous machine that is working. So sometimes your programmer can't do the testing itself because there is no end. I mean, the moment your item is finished, a new item is given to you. So then there, of course, there you can have this specialized team, a specialized testing team to test it. Then only the machine will start flowing, basically, on a continuous basis. So it's a non-stop machine that is going continuous basis. Items must be broken down so that they can be completed within one sprint. No particular item size. Again, the size that you pick may be depending on the team's capacity. Burn down chart can be prescribed here because you started with 10, then by end of the 2 weeks you have 0 pending activities. So 10, 9, 8, 8, 7, like that. A burning down chart you can do. You start the iteration with 10 items in your hand. Next day you have completed 9 items pending, 8 items pending, 7 items. At the end of 2 weeks, example, you'll be 0 items pending. But here, since it is continuous stuff, the moment you finish the one item, a new item will be added to your list. So it's a continuous stuff. No particular, actually you can't draw a burn down chart because it's always full. The burn down chart is always full. The work in progress is as constant, basically, end of the day. Likewise, so here, as I told you, the product owner and the scrum master and the team will be there. Here, of course, what they say is there is no such roles, strictly defined roles. Yeah, the Scrum board is reset after each sprint. Here, it's a persistent, it's a continuous board that is turning around. Right. So jumping into change management, and if you can recall the ADKA model that we did last time. So jumping into change management, how change management that we learned last time can be applied to an agile framework, which is an iterative cycle framework. So again, one of the key concepts that we learn in change is about individuals. We learn the concept that organization constitute of individuals, and change is driven by individuals. So in change management, and the agile values, the 4 main values of agile, they are trying to map into the change management concept. So in agile, again, what they say is individual interactions over process and tools. So try to interact with individuals, try to interact with your customers. So which is the main concept of change management also. So in change management, what they say is organization don't change, it is the individuals who change. From, if you can remember, from the current state to the future state, we have to push the individuals. And then if you can recall properly, from the last session, what we did was the project can deliver technical side, we can deliver a software, but if it is a working software, the people has to use the system to work, and people have to adapt to the system to work. People has to have the ability and the necessary skills to use the features of the software to work. So agile in that context is talking about a working software and not a delivery. So they're talking about give a customer after each iteration a working software. So likewise, in the change management side, without adaptation, without you as an individual adapting to a new system, uh, uh, the end result, the solution, a solution without result. There will be, otherwise there will be a solution. You will deliver a solution, ERP solution, but there won't be results until the users get adapted. Individual user get adapted to the uh, uh, the solution that you deliver. So again, so they are trying to map the agile values to the change management concept. So agile value talk about it. So working software in change management. Also, they are talking about a working solution at the end of the day, not what do you call it? Working system. Agile again is talking about customer collaboration, more into individual collaboration. Customer means individuals. Your customers organization, there can be different owners of your of the other side where you get the requirements. Then again, in the change management also we talk about individual change. So you're collaborating with your customers for maybe for UAT or user training. So we are again in the change management also we are talking about individual change. Responding to change, uh, respond to the change over without, I mean, over following a strict plan. Again, change is given by individual. What they say is in change management, the concept that we try to build in change management is that individuals give you change. So enabling successful individual change is the key for successful outcome. So here what they say, what they're trying to map the 4 key values of agile into the individualized change concept in the change management. Right. So this is what I said earlier. So the project team can deliver the product. The technical side, the project team can deliver the product, the design and deliver the product. But then at the individual side, you will have to embrace the change, adapt the change, and use the change for a working solution. I hope you can remember this diagram that we did last time. So here, so since we are on an iterative cycle, so we had the current state, and each iterative cycle will have a transition state and a future state, transition state and a future state, transition state and a future state to come into the future state. So whereas in previously, in a traditional project management perspective, current state, transition state, and there was a future state. But here, in a more agile concept, the unified value proposition will have each iterative cycle will have a transition state and a future state. So here, this one, if you can remember to recap, again, organization is made up of individuals, and you as a project manager, it's your duty to take every individual in this block of from the current state to a transition stage to a future state. So the same concept will go, and what we said was try to avoid a map like this. So we don't want some of people in the future state and some of the people in the transition stage. So for a project to be successful, a change to be successful, we have to ensure that everybody goes into the future state. So in Agile, as I told you, so the current state will be there, and each sprint or each iterative cycle, actually iterative cycle, sprint is a framework, so in the Scrum, so iterative cycle, basically you will have to go for the transition state and the future state, transition state, future state, transition state, future state, and then you come to the future state. Right. If you can remember the outcome model that we discussed the last time. So how we say how this outcome model maps in an agile environment. So awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So if you can remember, what they said was awareness, get the fellows know the need of the change. So put into their mind the need of the change. Desire, that is where the switching point that a person decides, no, I will participate in this change. and knowledge is how to change, and abilities and the skills and the behaviors, the skills required to use the system. So I got to example knowledge on the knowledge of playing golf, and ability to play golf is two different things. So knowledge is how to do it, and abilities, that's the skill that is required to do it. Sometimes in the K and knowledge and ability might be, the gap will be closer. Sometimes it will be larger, that you need more specialized training to get the work done. Uh, then of course reinforcement, uh, to ensure that you don't go backwards and try to do the previous old work together, to work. So always try to reinforce to stay in the change. These are the questions, or the what do you call the parameters that each, if you can recall, the last deck of slides, it's there. And this is what the end of the day, what you as a project manager, you as a change manager wants to hear. After giving awareness, now I understand why this is required, why the ERP system is required, why O365 is required. Now I have decided to participate in the O365 implementation. Now I know how to use the O365. I am able to send emails. I am able to do the team meetings to the O365 portal, and the ability part of it. And I will not revert back. I will continue with the O365. I won't go back to normal email system. So this is what you as a project manager, change manager would like to hear after the establishing all these elements. So in an outcome model, it's the same thing. Before that, in the waterfall traditional model, basically the ability, the key core skills of using the system that you delivered is comes at the deployment stage, or the at the go live, or the final stages of the UAT. So here they plug up the ability, and then the knowledge will come here, where at the pre-UAT stage, or at the development stage, at the discussion stage, you know the system will, the knowledge is there with your system. This system will come with these features. This system will have a screen to delete customers or add customers. So, but the ability to do it will come at the UAT stage or the go live stage, end of the day. Going forward, backwards, awareness at the beginning of the project, and the desire at somewhere here where you decide, each individual decide to participate in the project. And after go live, you have to reinforce, so that the people won't go to their old system method of doing work. Right. So when it comes to agile or sprint or whatever it is, agile method, uh, the change management splits into two. One is at the project level, one is at the sprint level. So at the project level, what do you think? Awareness is at more into sprint level, or more at the project level, maybe at the envisioning stage? So awareness is more into project level, at the envisioning stage. If you can remember the envisioning phase of the agile project management at the beginning, where you try to vision out what is the need and what is the business need of the project. So awareness is more at the what is required is more at the project level, at the envisioning stage, not at each sprint level. You need there is not zero. It's not zero. You need awareness at each sprint level or each iterative level, but then more is more appropriate at the project level. And same comes to desire, because the desire to participate in the project will be more at the project level, at the beginning of the project, and not at the sprint release level. Because for the customer, it is the sprint release level. The customer again will get involved at the release level to see the product, the working product at each release level. So, or at each sprint level. At the end of the sprint, you are going to show the product and what you have already developed at the last sprint. So the desire to participate will not be at the sprint level from the customer side. You have to create that desire of the customer to participate in the change at the beginning of the project level. You understand those two?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is not zero. So the customer or the guys, maybe the factory manager, factory manager to come and see this release is also a desire. So he will have to first come, make his mind and come and see the release, what we have done at this release. That is also, so there is desire at this level also. But then the main desire, the factory manager or the warehouse manager to participate in the ERP system implementation will come at the project level. And thereafter, there is at this, each sprint level, there will be a desire to come and see the release. When you as a core project manager calls that look here, we have got a release, let's come and see this release. Okay. And the knowledge and the ability is more at the sprint level, where the product features and what this product feature will do, what this tool will do, what this report writing tool will do, what these features in the system will do. So that is more at the sprint level, and the ability will be also more at the sprint level, that people will try the system and see whether that is meeting their requirements, or do a small UAT and see that is meeting their requirement at each sprint or as release level. And then reinforcement, what they say is reinforcement is a 50-50 split. Even at the project level, the main project level, after entire thing goes live, then there should be reinforcement to ensure that people will do not use the whole system again. And even at each sprint level, there should be some convincing part, so that people don't revert back to old methods or old functions, or ask for the old functions at the each sprint level or release level. So guys, you got the difference between how the awareness, desire, and knowledge, ability, and reinforcement splits between the project level and the sprint level. So 3 levels. Basically, yes, I understand the release. Yes, so yes, I understand release. Yes, I desire to participate in release, come and see the release. And yes, I know how to do what's needed in the release. I am able to do stuff what is in the release, the ability part. I will continue to do what is there in the release. So at the project level, again, same thing. I understand the project, and maybe at a very high level, maybe you might have to convince your team. For this project, we are going to do agile project management, and it's going to be an iterative cycle. So yes, I understand the agile approach. Yes, I understand there will be iterative cycles, and I have to participate in many iterative cycles. Then I will go and see one product at the end. So maybe as an agile concept, maybe you will have to first establish with your team or the business users that you will have to participate in several times than a traditional one time at the UAT. So there will be several UATs. Several times you will have to come and see the release. So basically, the ADKA principles will be applied at the release level, project level, and maybe at the project methodology level. Right. So if you can recall the 5 levels that we did last time in the last session on change management, the sponsorship roadmap, the communication roadmap, the communication plan, the coaching plan, the training plan, the system management plan, or sponsor roadmap. If you can recall, it's about helping your change manager or your business BU heads, so that we can having a special plan to help them, so that we can get the buying of the people under the business unit heads. Communication is for everybody, and coaching again is more into change managers or your management level, where you try to coach the management level, because it's important to get the buying of at the management level. Training again applies to the ground level, the people who are working. And the resistance management plan is again for everybody to ensure that there is no resistance at the desire level, because resistance will come at the desire level and mainly where they try to participate, decide to participate, and at the end where they try to resist to continuously use the new method of these for the entire organization, because we cannot go on training each and every individual. How will it be applied? So in a traditional waterfall method, uh, communication plan will apply from beginning to end, definitely. And sponsor roadmap, supporting the sponsors, supporting your BU heads will start from the business discussions level itself, and it will continue. And the coaching part for your again the sponsors and the change managers will again right throughout the UAT level, and in the coaching part, the co-coaching part will happen. The training part for your individual other users will happen at the UAT level in a traditional waterfall method. Resistance management, maybe you are needed at the business discussions level at the discovery stage. From the discovery stage itself, because that's where you start pitching change to our business users. We are doing like this, but in the ERP system, this is the way you do it, and this is the world practice to do it. No, then they will say no. Our one is the world best practice. Then you try to convince no that this is SAP. We are implementing SAP. We are implementing IFS. This is a world-class ERP system. This is the method that you have to do. Not your method is wrong. So this is where the resistance management will start kicking off at the business discussion level, and at the waterfall level, at the waterfall method. So in the agile, when it comes to agile, again splitting into project level and the sprint level or the release level. Sponsorships, again is supporting sponsors, is more into project level, because coaching them and getting your view heads as more at the product backlog level. So this is where you come try to understand the new features that is required, and the new functionality that is required. So maybe more into this coaching of your sponsors, maybe more into project level. Communication split up 50-50. Coaching again more into sprint level, because more into technical. The coaching coming in boils down into how the system is doing, how you can operate the system for your sponsors or the change managers. So it's more skewed towards sprint level, but then here also there is substantial coaching at the project level. Training is where each sprint, each release, the functionality you try to display and try to do a UAT at each sprint, at each release level, how to use the system. So training definitely more weightages at the release level. Resistance again 50-50 split up, because at the product backlog level, at the product at the spec level, there where you try to where you try to break down your vision into backlogs. Then there will be resistance at when you are pitching the new methods of doing things. And then here also at each release level, the new features, there can be resistance for new features. Maybe people say, oh, you have to go for 2 or 3 steps. This is very cumbersome. So resistance management will have to come at the sprint level also. So hope you got that split. Got it? Right. So once again, last slide, I guess. Okay. Once again, so communication will actually go off throughout the project. Sponsor supporting the sponsor will also is important to go throughout the project. And resistance management will also go mainly will go off throughout the project, but then at the sprint level also all four will have its part to play at each sprint level. At each iterative level, like this. Right. So that brings end to this session.